Calvary greetings, beloved. A young soul was taken into the throne room in heaven, where she saw great books in many volumes. From one of those books God revealed his plan for the earth and the destiny of mankind, written from the beginning of time. What she reveals will blow your mind and will make clear what you must do next concerning September and the coming of Christ. Please tell me where you are watching from. We see you and we care deeply for you. Keep watching to the end. What she was shown is urgent, hopeful, and could change the way you live from this day forward. My name is Serafina, and I am the mother of a little girl whose life has brought me into the deepest fear and also the strongest hope I have ever known. I never imagined that on the 2nd day of August, my entire world would be shaken and turned toward things I could never deny. My daughter, whose name is Eliana, is only 10 years old. She is a tender girl, quiet at heart, but often full of questions about God and why the world feels so troubled. That day, she had been weak, lying in bed as if her strength was melting away. I feared it was more than just sickness. I sat by her side, holding her hand, when suddenly her breathing slowed, and her eyes seemed fixed on something far away. I called her name again and again, but she did not move or speak. Panic filled me, thinking I had lost her. My heart raced as I shook her shoulders, begging God not to take my child from me. In that moment, I felt the room grow still, almost like time itself had stopped. Her face, though pale, carried a calmness I could not understand. After what seemed like hours but could not have been more than minutes, Eliana stirred. When she opened her eyes, she whispered that something had happened, something she could never have imagined. She told me she had left her body and had been taken into a place where things of heaven and earth were shown to her. Eliana told me that as she lay there on the bed, her body became heavy, but at the same time, she felt lighter than air. She said it was as though her chest no longer held her, and suddenly she was looking down at herself lying still while I sat by her side crying. She said she wanted to reach out and comfort me, but her hands passed through me like smoke. She realized she was no longer inside her body. She explained how a strange calmness covered her, and she felt no pain at all. She described hearing the sound of her own heartbeat fade into silence, and then a different sound came, one she could not compare to anything on earth. It was like the rushing of wind mixed with the ringing of bells. Eliana told me that the room filled with a brightness that did not hurt her eyes. From within it, she saw two shining beings who looked stronger than anything she could describe. Their faces were gentle but fierce at the same time, and though they never spoke with their mouths, she understood their presence clearly. They stood by her as though waiting, and she felt drawn to follow them. She said her spirit was lifted higher and higher until the ceiling of the room vanished before her eyes, and suddenly she was rising into the sky. She could see our street, our home, and even the people outside going about their day without knowing what was happening to her. She said it made her heart tremble because she realized how close heaven was, and yet how unaware people were of what was soon to come. Eliana told me that as she kept rising, the world beneath her began to change. She saw the earth trembling, buildings shaking as if they could no longer hold their ground. She looked up and noticed the sky darkening, though it was still daytime. The sun seemed to lose its strength, and then her eyes caught the moon. She said the moon turned into a deep red, glowing like blood against the dark heavens. It was not beautiful. Eliana told me that after she saw the signs in the sky, her eyes were drawn back down to the earth, and what she witnessed filled her with both sorrow and fear. She said the ground shook with great force, and many buildings fell in different places. She described how she saw people running in the streets, crying out in confusion because nothing made sense to them. It was not just one city, she said, but many places across the world at the same time. She told me she could hear the sound of crashing glass, the roaring of fires starting in houses, and the panicked voices of people who could not find their children or loved ones. She explained that cars were colliding, and thick smoke rose into the air. She even mentioned seeing soldiers and police officers trying to control the crowd, but their weapons and strength were useless against the terror that had come. Eliana said she saw bullets fired into the air, and missiles released from far away, but when they came close to those who belonged to God, they melted away like mist in the morning sun. She understood then that this was God's hand of protection, shielding his children even when the world's greatest weapons were unleashed. She described seeing the sea rising higher than before, flooding streets and carrying away cars and houses. People cried for help, but many found none. Some shouted in anger at God, while others dropped to their knees in repentance. She said it was like a great dividing line, where each person revealed what was truly in their heart when fear surrounded them. She turned to me with tears in her eyes as she explained how real it all was. She said the earth looked like it was unraveling before her eyes, and yet she was not harmed. She knew then that Jesus was close, very close, and that these events were warnings of his coming. She reminded me again that she was made to understand clearly, we have only a few days left before the rapture, and this short time is God's mercy to wake people up so they will not be left behind. Eliana told me that as the world shook and chaos filled the earth, she suddenly felt her body become lighter, as though something powerful was pulling her upward. She said it was not a frightening pull but one full of comfort and strength. It was like invisible arms wrapped around her, carrying her away from the danger she saw below. She described how others around her began to rise too. At first, she thought she was alone, but then she noticed people dressed in shining clothes lifting off the ground. Some were young, some were old, but all of them carried the same peace and joy on their faces. They were rising from homes, streets, hospitals, and even cars. Eliana said they did not use wings or ropes, but their spirits were lifted by a force greater than gravity. She explained that as they rose, bullets, stones, and even fire tried to reach them, but nothing could touch them. The weapons turned to dust in the air before making contact. She said she understood in that moment that no harm could stop God's plan. It was like the hand of heaven itself shielded every single one of them. Eliana looked down again and said the cries of those left behind pierced her heart. People reached out their arms, trying to grab the ones being taken, but their hands touched only air. Some screamed in anger, while others fell to the ground, weeping because they realized too late what had happened. Eliana said it was the hardest part to see, because she knew those who were left behind had missed the rescue. She told me that as she continued to rise, her own clothes changed. The simple dress she had been wearing was gone, replaced with a garment so white and shining it looked alive. She said it felt weightless but strong, as if no stain or dirt could ever touch it. She knew then that she had been clothed for heaven. As they kept rising, Eliana said she saw angels moving alongside the people. Their faces were brighter than the sun, yet she could look at them without pain. They carried no weapons, but their presence was so mighty that no enemy dared to come near. She felt safe, covered, and unafraid. Then she said the voice she had heard earlier returned to her spirit. It let her know that this was the rapture, the catching away of believers to meet the Lord. She said her heart trembled with both joy and sorrow, joy because she was safe with God's people, but sorrow because so many were not ready. Eliana told me that after what felt like a long journey through the heavens, a brightness greater than anything she had ever seen opened before her eyes. It was not the brightness of the sun, which can blind the eyes, but a living light that drew her closer with love and power at the same time. She described a vast throne room stretching farther than the mind could measure. The ground shone like clear glass, yet it was strong under her feet. Around her were countless people, all clothed in garments of white, their faces glowing with joy. At the very center, high and lifted up, she saw the throne. Upon it sat one whose glory filled every corner of that place. She told me his face was so full of light that she could not describe it, yet she felt she knew him as deeply as a child knows her father. His robe was shining white, and on his head was a crown with a purple cross that seemed to emanate glory. Around the throne were rainbows of colors that moved like fire yet did not burn. Eliana explained how angels stood in multitudes, some bowing, others lifting their hands in praise, while a great host of redeemed people worshipped in awe. She said the sound of worship was not like anything on earth, it was thunderous yet gentle, mighty yet tender, filling every part of her being with peace. Then, as she stood there, her eyes were drawn to something near the throne. She saw great books placed before him. She said these books were large and shining, and as they were opened, it was as though time itself was being revealed. She understood that the books contained the record of all people, their names, their choices, and the seasons of God's plan. It was in those books that she saw something that made her tremble. She said the month of September appeared clearly before her, shining brighter than the rest, marked as a season of the rapture. But she was not shown the exact day or year, whether it was 2025 or another year. All she knew was that September carried the weight of heaven's warning, a time of gathering and fulfillment. Eliana told me that as she looked at the great books before the throne, she felt as though the pages were alive. She said the words and markings were not written in ordinary ink but shone with light, and every symbol seemed to speak directly to her spirit. She explained that the books contained the secrets of people's lives, their choices, their obedience, their love, and even the hidden thoughts that no one else knew. She noticed that some names shone brightly on the pages, and those names gave her great joy, because she knew they belonged to those who were ready for the Lord's coming. But she also saw spaces where names had once been but now were faint, almost erased, and she said her heart ached deeply when she realized those were people who had turned away from God's path. Eliana explained that one part of the book opened wide, and she felt her spirit drawn to it. That was when she saw the word September glowing like fire. She told me it was not just a month written plainly, but a sign surrounded by light, a reminder that this season carried weight in God's calendar. She said she tried to understand if it meant this year, 2025, or another year in the future, but the books did not reveal the exact date or time. Instead, she understood clearly that it was meant to show urgency, that the rapture was near, closer than many believe, and that believers must live each day as if it could be the day. Eliana told me that while she was still caught up in the worship, her spirit was suddenly made to see the earth again. She said it was as though the throne room opened a window, and she could look down upon the world she had left behind. What she saw filled her with sorrow. She said people were busy chasing after their own desires, building their lives as if nothing was about to happen. Many laughed and mocked the things of God, and some even rejected His name completely. She explained that she was made to understand that the warning of September was not placed in the books to frighten, but to awaken. The rapture is a rescue plan for those who belong to Christ, but for those who turn away, it will be the beginning of sorrow. She told me she saw how people would search for hope and peace but would find none once that moment passed. She told me she could not tell whether it was September of 2025 or another year, but she knew the season was close. She explained that God wanted His children to live ready every single day because the rapture will come suddenly, without a moment's notice. Eliana told me that after she saw the earth and received the warning, she began to feel herself being pulled away from the throne room. She said her heart longed to stay, because the peace and worship there were greater than anything she had ever known. She described how the light around her began to fade, and the voices of worship grew distant, though they never truly left her spirit. As she came closer to the earth again, she said she could see our home, our street, and the small room where I was still holding her hand. She told me that the angels who had guided her at the beginning were still with her, and they remained until she was safely back inside her body. Eliana explained that the moment her spirit entered her body again, she felt a heavy weight return, her chest ached, her breathing struggled, and her weakness came back. But this time she was not afraid. She said she opened her eyes slowly and saw my face covered with tears, and she wanted to tell me everything she had seen before the memory faded. As I listened to my daughter Eliana pour out everything she had seen, my heart trembled. I knew this was not just a dream, nor the imagination of a weak child. It was a true near-death experience, a message written on her spirit and delivered to me so that I could carry it to others. From that day, I could never look at life the same way again. I want to tell every believer who hears this, time is not in our hands. My daughter's vision made it clear that the days are short, and though the books showed September, they did not give the exact year or date. Whether it is this year or another to come, what matters most is readiness. God is not showing these things to bring fear but to give us hope and to remind us that His rescue plan, the rapture, is real and near. Do not waste these days chasing after the world while forgetting your soul. Do not hold on to anger, unforgiveness, or secret sins, for the books in heaven record everything. Instead, set your heart right with God while there is still time. Pray daily, study His Word, and love one another deeply. Encourage your family and friends to turn to Christ, for no one can carry another person's salvation. Each one must be ready for themselves. The worship Eliana described reminded me that heaven is joy beyond anything we know, and that is what awaits those who remain faithful. But the chaos she saw on earth warned me of the sorrow that comes to those left behind. I cannot keep silent, for love will not allow me to. I beg you, my brothers and sisters, take your Christian journey seriously. Walk in holiness, forgive quickly, and serve God with all your heart. Let your life be a light in this darkening world. The rapture is not far, and soon the trumpet will sound. Let it not catch you unprepared. That is the message my daughter carried back from her near-death journey, and I pray you will hear it as I heard it, with trembling, but also with hope.